towards the atomic bomb?
Neither myself nor anybody of our fathers heard a single outburst of hate against the Americans in those terrible days. And during the whole war, we didn't experience much about hatred against the Allies. As a matter of fact, at the beginning of the war, after the big Japanese victories, the Japanese were inclined to look down on the enemy. But then, after the offensive went off according to schedule, they began to admire the skill of the Americans. And especially since the majestic B-29 appeared over Tokyo, practically every Japanese admired the technical skill of the Americans.
Father, what is your and your colleagues' opinion as to the use of the atomic bomb?
We have discussed among ourselves the ethics of the use of the bomb. Some consider it in the same category as poison gas and were against its use on the civilian population. Others were of the view that in total war, as carried on in Japan, there was no difference between civilians and soldiers, and that the bomb itself was an effective force tending to end the bloodshed, warning Japan to surrender and thus to avoid total destruction. It seems logical to me that he who supports total war in principle cannot complain of a war against civilians. The crux of the matter is whether total war in its present form is justifiable even when it serves a just purpose. Does it not have material and spiritual evil as its consequences which far exceed whatever the good that might result? When will our moralists give us a clear answer to this question?
The business of living goes on in the devastated areas of Hiroshima. In the northeastern section of the city, temporary homes are constructed of whatever materials can be salvaged from the ruins. Near the Higashi Railroad Station in eastern Hiroshima, scrap lumber, tin, and roof tile are all used in an attempt to build anew, in no matter how flimsy a fashion. Immediately following the bombing of Hiroshima, the President of the United States delivered an ultimatum to the Japanese government. Surrender or face complete destruction. The ultimatum was ignored. At 10:58 the morning of August 9th, Japanese time, the second atomic bomb was exploded over the industrial seaport city of Nagasaki. Almost the entire population of 230,000 people was engaged in the manufacture of arms, munitions, and other war products. Two great Mitsubishi factories were located in the heart of the city. To the north, one of the world's largest torpedo plants, and further south, the huge steel and arms works. The bomb, which was dropped on Nagasaki, was aimed at a point midway between the two plants in order to cause the greatest possible industrial damage. Unlike Hiroshima, the force of the explosion at Nagasaki was largely confined to the industrial valley, which was surrounded by a series of hills that shielded many other areas of the city. Going higher and higher and reaching into the stratosphere. Because the bomb was exploded high above the ground, the greatest part of its harmful radioactive material was dissipated in the stratosphere. As a result, the area under the explosion was relatively free from radioactivity. Persons entering Nagasaki shortly after the explosion to do rescue work sustained no ill effect or injury. an area of a little more than 3 square miles, there was very severe damage by blast and fire. Most buildings were reduced to rubble. Still recognizable from the air are the skeleton remainders of the Mitsubishi plants, the large steel and arms works, and the ordnance factory devoted to the manufacture of torpedoes. The Mitsubishi Steel and Arms Works extended almost a mile in length. Its buildings were modern and typical of American industrial construction, having steel frames and roof and siding of corrugated metal or asbestos. Buildings of reinforced concrete still stand amid the wreckage of steel frames. Some smokestacks survived. They offered comparatively little resistance to the blast. But, as in Hiroshima, the directional force bent steel and stripped corrugated metal from the framework of the building. Where corrugated metal remained, it was pushed in like tissue paper. These buildings show a varying degree of destruction depending upon proximity to 0 point and building strength. This foundry, 3/10 of a mile away from 0 point, shows considerable damage in spite of fairly good construction. Other buildings were stronger, some being constructed to support heavy overhead cranes. Damage to equipment inside was nevertheless serious. This machinery had been used in the manufacture of naval rifles, anti-aircraft guns, and heavy artillery. In the valley, homes were scattered through factory areas. On machinery in many of these homes, piecework was carried on to help the Japanese war effort. Blast and secondary fire destroyed the lightly constructed buildings, in many cases leaving damaged equipment. Photographed from 0 point, this area of 3 1/10 square miles shows almost utter devastation by blast and fire. Note how hills in the south interrupted the blast. In the second area of 5 1/2 square miles, there was moderate damage from blast and severe damage from fires. The total area of damage covered almost 42 1/2 square miles, ranging from complete destruction to damaged roofs and broken windows. The greatest distance at which damage was measured was 12 miles, where, through a peculiar focusing of concussion, workers' barracks were knocked down. One-half mile from 0 point, a cracked smokestack. A prison of concrete and masonry 2/10 of a mile from 0 point was almost totally destroyed. The walls left standing were parallel to the direction of the blast. This area was completely wiped out from 0 point up to the church at the foot of the hills about a mile away. In the bed of the creek rests the dome, which was blown from its place at the top of the church. The gas works was blown into a mass of twisted steel. 2 concrete walls, the remains of 2 factory buildings. Bridges showed greater destruction in Nagasaki than in Hiroshima. But even close to 0 point, the downward force of the blast failed to damage roads and railroads due to the height at which the bomb was detonated. The main north-south street of Nagasaki was in use shortly after the disaster occurred. A typical residence on the outskirts of Nagasaki, a mile and a half from 0 point. 6 weeks after the explosion of the atomic bomb over Nagasaki, the survivors are busy working at the restoration of their homes. This is the record. Endless man-hours of work. 2 B-29s, 2 atomic bombs 3 days apart. 2 cities. The tabulation of that record speaks for itself.